Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As you guys can see, we are in the main bay today. We'll be going over the Corvette shortly, but you guys will notice that I am missing something, and that is the driver's side fender. And that is actually missing because, like I said in the previous video, we're going to be working on the wiring and the fuel system for the Corvette. As you guys know from my previous videos, we have an A&A twin Holley fuel pump system on here. Basically, A&A did the wiring, the brackets, and the vacuum tube and all that stuff, but the pumps are from Holley. So you guys know we've got that big dash 10 coming out of our fuel tank going into the twin Holley pump, and that twin Holley pump going up to the fuel rail. And we've already shown you those fuel rail videos. So, and as you guys might know from our previous videos, we have been controlling our fuel system via hob switch, actually two of them, one for each pump, and that vibrant vacuum block. Now that did not come from A&A. I modified that for my application. So as you guys know, we've got some hob switches. Well, today what we're basically going to be doing is cutting off all the relays, wiring, and everything, and replacing all those relays with this MSD Solid State Relay. You guys will recognize that from the previous video. So, I probably had 4 to 6 wires tied into that alternator. It was really ugly. So what we'll be doing today is narrowing that down to one power wire, and then obviously your ground and feeds to activate that relay. So the hob switches, I believe, are controlled by ground, if I remember correctly. And then we also have a Racetronix hot wire fuel kit for the C6. Actually, it's designed for the C5 and C6 that basically took power directly from the alternator instead of it going through the factory harness, which is really small. So we've basically got 3 fuel pumps to wire. The stock Z06 fuel pump, the twin Holley pumps, and how we have to activate that, electronically is going to be through this MSD block. So my rough plan is to take this piece of aluminum, mount both the vacuum block and the MSD block, trim it, and maybe put the 2 mounting screws in the middle that will attach to the fender. Yes, this might look crazy, but honestly, guys, it was the easiest way for me to get access to all the wiring, the mounting, and everything was just to take the fender off. I've only probably been out here for 30 minutes maybe, and I took off the 10 to 15 screws that held the fender on. It's not all that many screws. There's 10 millimeter here. The rest are either T15 or 7 millimeter. If you guys are on a lift, you will probably have to lift the car up by the front suspension and move that lift because there's a bolt the very end of the fender right here. So there's a 7 millimeter bolt that was hidden by the lift arm. So just be aware of that. So here is our Pro Speed breather. I like the setup. I have no problems with it, but it does create kind of a mounting problem for anything else that you want to install back here. We used to have the vacuum block over here, but I haven't really been happy with that. So what my plan is to take the 2 mounting nuts that you guys can see here, drill 2 holes in that aluminum plate that we just showed you, and mount either the power, the MSD box up here, or the MSD box down below, and the vacuum source, one or the other. I haven't quite figured out which way is going to be which, but I think the MSD box might fit better on the bottom, and we'll put the vacuum block up top. I think that's how that's going to work out. So, yeah, so basically, I had to get access to everything. The fender's gone, and now we've got plenty of room to, plumb our vacuum source, go through all the wiring, and install all of our upgrades. All right, guys, I have both of the blocks mocked up. As you guys can see, we kind of settled on the vacuum block up top, the MSD box on bottom. And that's just due to sizing. As you guys can see, the MSD box is just a little bit larger than the vacuum block. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to see where that X is. I'm going to cut that off. You guys can kind of see the blue holes through the vacuum block. We're going to drill those out. So the vacuum block will be up top. These 2 little X's, that's where our mounting bolts are going to be. So that's going to mount to the breather tank. And then down here, you guys will see we have the MSD box. You'll notice I've got the top marked off with the hole to drill, but I don't have anything on the bottom. Alright guys, we've got all of our initial holes drilled. I am actually going to make 4 of these holes bigger, so the mounting block we're going to make bigger, and then the mounts to the breather can, we're going to make that bigger as well. Alright guys, I've made actually a lot of good progress, and as you guys can see, we have the vacuum block fully mounted, we have the MSD box fully mounted, and I actually ran the vacuum source for our vacuum block. I even plugged that in. So I opened the door, it doesn't hit anything. It's going to be a little close to this vacuum line, but if I have to, I can obviously just put a 90-degree fitting in there to get it to shoot down quicker. The wiring, I'm not all that concerned. We can always zip tie that out of the way. And I did want to say we did have one change. Bottom of this aluminum bracket, actually I bent it out probably 5 degrees and it gave us all the clearance that we need. Because what was happening, the bottom of this bracket was hitting the tank. You guys can actually kind of see it rubbing up against there. I might put a piece of rubber or foam back behind there, but honestly, I don't really think it's needed all that much. But as you guys can see, I actually changed the mount to be, you know, going straight toward the aluminum plate instead of it being horizontal or the other direction. And so I was able to put a nut and bolt on the bottom here, on the top, and we're done. I don't have to do any welding, and that just saved us a whole bunch of time. So you guys can kind of see the bend. It's right about here. It's basically right underneath the second bolt back behind this AN fitting. Yeah, that is us cleaning up our vacuum block, our new MSD box, as well as using the Pro Speed mount, utilizing a mount that I already had, so I didn't have to drill anymore in the car. Now guys, I did put the fender back on the car. Everything clears without issue. I really just want to show you where you really have to be careful. You guys can see this top mount right here. This is actually where the fender kind of comes up and around and screws into this. I did put the fender back on. We clear it by, I don't know, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, something like that. So we're pretty much good to go. And the other thing I wanted to say was this block isn't sitting too far out this way either, because, you know, this is a big fender. It kind of goes, it wraps, it almost pretty much perfectly wraps around the box, and it ends right here. So as long as you're below the plane of the mounting bracket, you should be good. And as you guys can see, we've got like a 1/2 inch there. And yeah, so all we got to do now is basically clip our existing relays, wire them into the MSD box, and go from there. All right guys, here is one pile of the wiring that I have removed from the engine bay. So all this stuff is going to be gone, and like I said, we're just going to be replacing this with one battery cable. Alright guys, as you can see, we've actually wired up some of the wiring. So the fuel pumps, like I said, I clipped the harnesses, clipped the fuse and relay and all that off, and we just plugged it into port 1 and port 2 on the MSD box. The hob switch is what activates this. It activates it via ground, so I put that into port 1 and port 2 on that switch as well. And so yeah, that's pretty much it for wiring the Holley. You eliminate the fuse, you eliminate the relay. All you have to do is plug those 2 ports in and you're good to go. Now I actually do have to do 2 more things. One, I need to create a battery cable, so we're gonna go do that shortly. And the second thing is I need to create a ground for this MSD box. If they go to the top port on the bottom, that is actually the ground. So I will have to run that up through the chassis. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm probably gonna run it up here to this ground right here. So you guys will see that right there. There's a 10mm bolt. Just grab a black wire, run it up through the engine bay and down into that. So that should be the ground for that. All right, guys, to create this battery cable, it's gonna be pretty simple. As you guys can see, this is actually a 1/0 size battery cable. I actually did this earlier in the project. That's what is actually on the LS9 alternator right now. So this was kind of my test piece for that. So what I bought was a crimping tool, battery cable, and the terminal. That's pretty much all you're gonna need. So as you guys can see right here, we have the battery cable. The Holley box, sorry, the MSD box calls for a 2.0 battery cable. So I got 10 feet of this. I got a set of terminals. So these are the 2.0 AWG terminals with a 5/16. That's what size our alternator plug is. And you guys can also see I got this hydraulic crimper. So I got all of this on Amazon. This is actually the second project I'll be using for the crimper. The 1.0 size worked just fine. And you guys can see, this actually says 2.0 AWG on the die. And so I actually just swapped these out. I had a set of 1/0 gauge dies in here. So you basically just swap the dies out. And I think this kit came with like 10 sets of dies. So, you know, you can use this for multiple battery sizes. And I think you might be able to use it for other types of crimping as well. But I think it's specifically used for battery cables. The best way I found to cut this outer sheath was this pipe cutter. Now, I didn't use it to go all the way down to the copper itself. I just used it to kind of score the outside edge. Then I switched over to a sharp knife. But, you know, after I got a circle around the entire surface of the cable, I did a vertical slit. So cut that in half, and I just started peeling back, and I just used a sharp knife to cut whatever part of the surface I needed to cut off. So, all right, guys, another day, another dollar, as they say, but take my lesson. There is a difference between 2/0 gauge and 2 gauge. As you guys can see, we have a completed wire battery cable here. This is a 2 by 5/16, so this is a 2 gauge lug versus a 2.0 lug. And here is actually the 2/0 lug, and it's way bigger. So I was trying to crush a 2/0 lug onto a 2 gauge wire, and yeah, that's obviously not going to work. So basically how this works is you put your lug inside the crimper, you tighten the crimper down. You'll actually see I did create that ground wire. It's the very top wire in the distribution block up top. And I did run it through the engine bay, and it's down here right by the strut. So that's all grounded out. You'll see the battery cable is ran. I haven't sheathed it yet. I am gonna do that next. So battery cable's been ran up and over to my old racing battery, which shockingly still had a charge, but it won't charge a car. So I guess it's good for testing. So I just have the positive terminal clamped to the battery cable that we created, and I did ground out the passenger side or the negative side of the battery. I don't want anything feedbacking or looping or anything like that. So now we should be able to test it. If you guys can see, I swapped the red wire for a yellow wire, and that is going to this light bulb. So, and then I have the light bulb grounded out to a chassis mount over here. So everything should be good to go. And so we're actually going to test this. So I'm going to use the vacuum tube and some compressed air. And if this works properly, the bulb should light up. There you go. See? Applying, I don't know, air, a couple PSI, and it's glowing. Now let me let's go. There you go. Bam. So, all right. So you'll see the power cord is coming out of the second port instead of the first one. There you go. So there, we verified that our wiring is going to work, and applying air pressure to the vacuum block. The vacuum block's got a tight enough seal it's not leaking, and that is kicking on our fuel system. Now, if you guys remember the ZR1 LS9 assembly lid, I think it called a modification lid, whatever. I actually did have the 2.5 bar map sensor installed, but I actually have a little bit of an update. We're actually going to put this, I think it's from ICT Billet. If I'm wrong, I'll correct it down below. But basically what this is it's actually a 3, you could put 3 map sensors on here if you wanted. You got the original on top, you could put one up front and one out back. So I blocked off the front port because we're not going to be using that, but the back side, we will be using that for our vacuum line. So I will plug this vacuum line into this 3/8 port. I think that's a 3/8 to 1/4 inch plastic hose fitting. And like I said, I got this adapter from, I think it was ICT Billet. If it was LSX Innovations, I'll correct it down below. And we're going to put that on top of the LS9 lid. So it'll sit something like that. So, all right, guys, here's kind of a rough draft of how this is going to work. You guys can see the adapter. You can see the 3/8 air hose line coming out of there. That's coming to this hard plastic fitting. It's going down into the vacuum block, and we're good there. So I might actually replace this piece of plastic air hose line. That's probably 3 or 4 years old, and it's just too short. It's almost like it's like a 1/2 inch too short. So I did get it jammed in there for now, so that's kind of okay. But you know, I did want to get this below the cowl and kind of hide that a little bit better. This battery cable, it's going to go back behind the engine when we're done. And yeah, so that is the controlling system. The ICT billet adapter, the 2.5 bar map sensor, and then underneath it is our air hose for the vacuum block. So that's pretty much it for the aftermarket fuel pump and everything, especially with the Holley setup and the MSD box. Now, I do have one more setup to do. That is the Racetronix hot wire kit for the fuel pump. I'm actually not going to film that because it's very simple, but basically this cable right here, this cable used to run directly to the alternator over here. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to clip this cable. It's a red wire. We're going to plug that into the hot side So port number 3, that'll be the battery feed and going back to the fuel pumps. And then there is a gray wire in the back there. I'm going to show you a picture of it here. I'm going to put an arrow toward it. We're going to clip that wire, run my own wire forward. Where that's going to go, that's going to end up going on the positive terminal up here, up top. You guys actually can't see it. It's right here. Oh, it's right here. So that's going to go into the positive terminal of port 3. So gray wire to port 3 positive, port 3 power, go back to your fuel pumps. That's it, run a wire, you're good to go. So I wanted to get this video done and out there. So if we have any problems with that system, we'll let you guys know in a future video. But I did want to show you the full wiring for our aftermarket fuel pumps and everything. And obviously, guys, if you have a ZR1, you're probably going to skip this whole video. But if you are like an LS3, LS2 swap like I am, this will help some of those guys out with an aftermarket fuel controller. And so yeah, with the fueling being done, we're pretty much done. We're ready to move on to firing up the car, getting HP tuners loaded. I do have to do one more thing while we're under here. I do want to extend the output of the fuel pressure switch. I've got a fuel pressure switch here, and I do have an aftermarket wideband that's actually in the Cook's collector. So I want to run those wires from our Aeroforce gauge interceptor. I do want to run that to the HP tuners input. I think if you get the HP tuners MPVI 3 or 2, whatever it is, the Pro version, you guys can have a data input. So it would really help out my tuner if I had access to, fuel pressure as well as the wideband. So we're going to include that. Actually, all that wire is inside the car. I need to get the car off the lift and do that outside because I don't have room to be digging under the dash in this narrow third bay. So yeah, that is actually gonna be a future video. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. So if you guys want to see that HP tuners video, the inputs into that, the first fire up and all that stuff, hit that subscribe button, turn on your bell notifications. If you guys want to help support the channel, I will drop links to everything that we used today. The MSD box, the wiring, the hose, the battery cables, all that. We'll drop all those links down below. And make sure you check out our website, BonecrrusherSS.com, because like I've said in the past, anything you guys contribute there, go right back into the channel. We've got a bunch of tuning to pay for, so if you guys could help me out, that'd be great. So thanks, guys. Have a great one.